The Leafs and Habs battling a big one for both teams. A handful of teams are looking to clinch. Others were looking for help and division titles on the line out west. We've got a full recap of Saturday in the NHL right now on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before. Only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of the night in the NHL. We are available 7 days a week, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Eddie Garcia, an LA Kings fan on the West Coast. He is Shukri Wrights, a Boston Bruins fan on the East Coast. And together, we are bringing you all the goals, saves, big moments, and stories from the night in the NHL. Shuey had 11 games in the NHL Saturday night. And going into the day, almost every one of those games had some kind of importance in the playoff race.
And those are the best games, in fact. So it was a hockey buffet for the final Saturday of the regular season. And man, when I tell you, it was one hell of a Saturday for hockey fans. And let's get into it because I'm ready to divulge into more hockey talk. Let's go.
Well, going into the day, I thought Maple Leafs Canadiens was clearly the game of the night, and it lived up to the hype. Montreal would be in the playoffs with a regulation win. They do not get it. The Leafs win it 1-0 in overtime. Let's check in with our local expert, one of the co-hosts of Locked On Canadiens.
The Canadiens still have not clinched a playoff spot, but they are getting closer and closer with each passing day. Ian Boisvert here, Locked On Canadiens, coming to you after the Montreal Canadiens 1-0 overtime loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday night in Toronto. Montreal, the story has been they've been outshot, they've been in games, they've managed to win a bunch, they've managed to lose a couple in a row now. That was the story again in Toronto in this one. Montreal, I think, started better. Their start was better. They didn't give Toronto too much to work with, but they just could not generate anything of their own throughout most of this game. The first line got a couple chances late. Jakub Dobeš was the story for the Canadiens, making 34 of 35 saves. Montreal picks up a crucial point, and while it doesn't clinch the playoffs for them, it does eliminate the Detroit Red Wings, who are now out of the playoff race in the Eastern Conference, and it does make the path to the playoffs a little bit easier for Montreal. Any loss by the Columbus Blue Jackets between now and the end of the season eliminates them, and 2 points of any fashion by the Canadiens between now and the end of the season eliminates the Columbus Blue Jackets. So Columbus back at it on Sunday. We'll see how that plays out. Things are not going the way the Canadiens would have liked as of late, but they stuck in there with one of the better teams in the league, probably the division champions in the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they've got a softer matchup on Monday. The Chicago Blackhawks are coming into town, and this guy named Ivan Demidov is going to make his NHL debut, so it looks like Montreal is still on the right path, still haven't clinched, but stick with us. Locked On Canadiens will have you covered the rest of the way. Playoffs or not, but I hope there are playoffs in Montreal's future.
All right, thank you to Ian Boisvert, one of the co-hosts of Locked On Canadiens. He still sounds pretty upbeat, and I don't blame him necessarily, but that's 2 chances with regulation wins for the Canadiens to get in, and they have failed both times. Though this one was a great game. Came down, 0-0 after regulation. I was watching on Hockey Night in Canada. I know you were too. 1957, the last time the Leafs and Habs went scoreless in regulation. But Mitch Marner comes through in the clutch.
It was one hell of a game. And you talk about a goaltending clinic on both sides. You got to give credit where it's due. Like, listen, Anthony Stolarz put up a clinic, 15 saves, shutout, and as well as Jacob Dobeš, who made 34 saves for the Canadiens, despite that one save he wished he could have made against Mitch Marner in overtime. But I'm not going to put this loss on Dobeš, who did his job. But the reality is this. I thought the Montreal Canadiens started the game on time because we talked about it in last night's episode where the Canadiens needed to do a better job. They started on time and that they had their chances, But defensively, I thought the Maple Leafs, they were well structured, and Craig Berube thought that the Maple Leafs executed their game plan to a T. So even though Montreal is coming off a 6-game winning streak and they've now lost back-to-back games, I wouldn't hit the panic button just yet. You're facing off against the Chicago Blackhawks on Monday, and it's Dimitrov watching Montreal. So relax, Canadian fans. Do not panic. You're going to be fine. Clinch it at home, and it's official. You're going to the playoffs.
And they almost won this one in overtime. Nick Suzuki right down the middle.
Yeah.
The save was made, and then he lost his stick, and it led to a 3-on-2 for Toronto, and then Mitch Marner ended it for the Maple Leafs. Now 4 points up on Tampa Bay for first in the division. Toronto has clinched that they will have a home game in the first round of the playoffs. It doesn't mean that they've won the division yet, but they can finish no lower than second in the Atlantic, so they will be at home in the first round of the playoffs. All right, and as was mentioned by Ian Boisvert, that win by the Canadiens did officially eliminate the Detroit Red Wings for a 9th straight season. No playoff hockey in Hockey Town. Let us head out west, where the Minnesota Wild also were looking to punch their playoff ticket. They needed a regulation win and also a loss by the St. Louis Blues. We'll check in on that in a minute. But they would get the win, a 3-2 overtime victory. We check in with our local expert, the host of Locked On Wild.
It looked pretty grim. The Minnesota Wild were down 2-0, but they found a way to get the game to OT, and Matt Zuccarello sent everybody home happy. Hey, everybody, Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, recapping a 3-2 overtime win for the Minnesota Wild against Vancouver. The Minnesota Wild needed both points. They fell behind in this game 2-0. Didn't look good, but they continued to chip away. Brock Faber, then Marcus Foligno scored, and the game went to overtime, tied at 2 apiece in the extra session. Matt Zuccarello scored his 19th goal of the season to give the Wild a huge second point, with the St. Louis Blues losing in a shootout. The Minnesota Wild are now 5 points ahead of the Calgary Flames, and the Flames need to get all 6 of their remaining points, and they need the Wild to lose against Anaheim. So it is coming right down to the wire. We'll keep you posted on Locked On Wild.
And we thank our guy Seth Topal, the host of Locked On Wild. Beautiful pass from Kirill Kaprizov, back healthy and helping Minnesota get a much-needed 2 points, feeding Matt Zuccarello right down the slot, and then he finishes with a sweet move to win this one for Minnesota.
It was a really critical win for the Minnesota Wild, and at one point, I was getting a little concerned for the Wild, considering that even though Vancouver absolutely, and I mean absolutely, had the momentum early on, especially in the way that they were able to take that 2-0 lead early in the game. But the thing that stood out to me was that it was a particular moment in this game where I believe it was Derek Forbort. It was Derek Forbort who took the punch, unfortunately. Who had to leave the game, and that game turned into I think it was a turning point for the Minnesota Wild, in which that Brock Faber and Marcus Foligno came up huge late in that third period. And ultimately, it's about when do your players step up huge. And obviously, Matt Zuccarello, as mentioned, he had the overtime winner. But I thought that moment was a pivotal moment in this game, in which that Derek Forbort unfortunately took that nasty punch in that scrum, like late in that third period. But you talk about a momentum swing right there. That was it for the Minnesota Wild, in my opinion.
And as you heard Seth say, the Wild needed a regulation loss by the St. Louis Blues to clinch a playoff spot. That did not happen. 7 rounds of the shootout before the Kraken pull out a 3-2 shootout victory over the Blues. So again, the Blues stay alive because they do get that point. So Minnesota has not clinched yet. But this is a wild one. It was 1-0 Seattle going into the third. Then we had 5 goals scored in the third. And then the game tying goal, a little bit of a controversy off the skate of Shane Wright for Seattle in. It was called a good goal on the ice. They reviewed it. They said no distinct kicking motion, so it stood up. But in the end, a good point, though, for the Blues. But the Kraken get the 4-3 shootout win.
It was one of those type of games where it was like, man, they can't possibly blow this game. The Blues were up in front. Everything was seemingly trending in the right direction for the Blues. And then, of course, when you go on a prolonged winning streak, it's as if that something at some point is bound to happen, and it did. And that was where I thought that the Kraken really came up huge and really had a huge opportunity like late in the game, where I thought that it was huge um, to see Shane Wright, one of the young stars for the Kraken, come up huge with that tying goal, like halfway through that third period. But I do think for the Blues, in their end, I thought that they have to do a better job of protecting leads, especially late in the game, in which you're up 3-2, and for some reason they just fell short. Even though they did get the critical point, it's a huge point. They still have a 4-point lead over the Calgary Flames, but you got to make sure that you don't fall into bad habits, especially as you wrap up the regular season.
By the way, Colton Parayko, the defenseman, back for St. Louis from injury. He had a goal in this one. So the Wild, 95 points, 1 game left. St. Louis, 94 points, 1 game left. Calgary, 90 points, but 3 games left for the Flames. So it's going to get interesting as we go along. 2 New York teams are now officially out. That is next on Locked On NHL Game Night. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether you're picking your favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways that you can bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. And you need to get on this right away. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets. All right, we talked about it just a moment ago, Shu. A couple of New York teams needing wins to keep their hopes alive and get some help. One of them was the Rangers. That help did not arrive as they lose 7-3 to the hands of the Carolina Hurricanes. At the time, the Canadians hadn't played yet, so the Rangers were playing at that point to stay alive, and they do not get the job done. We're going to check in, though, with our local expert, the host of Locked On Hurricanes.
The Carolina Hurricanes complete the regular season sweep of the New York Rangers, winning 7-3 on Saturday. Seth Jarvis with a 3-point game gets him up to 66, which puts him one behind his career total best that he had last year was 67. With 3 games to go, he has a very good shot of getting 68. Jackson Blake gets a multi-point game as well, getting his 17th goal of the season. Jordan Stahl, the captain, also gets a multi-point game after being nominated for the Masterton and the King Clancy Awards on Wednesday. Overall, great game by the Canes. They're now 47, 27, and 5 with 3 games left. And they play the Toronto Maple Leafs tomorrow for the last regular season home game at the Lenovo Center before the playoffs. They are 31-8-1 at home. If they do win that game tomorrow, it will be a new franchise record for home wins in a season. Currently, they are tied with 31. So a big game tomorrow for the Hurricanes. But today, huge win, winning 7-3 over the New York Rangers to sweep them in the regular season and also eliminate them from the playoffs.
Thanks to Zach Martin, our host of Locked On Hurricanes. You can follow him all playoff long, as you can follow with the Hurricanes. But the real story here is, with all due respect to Carolina, Shu, is the New York Rangers, the 4th team in NHL history to win the President's Trophy one year and then miss the playoffs the next year. And oh, by the way, the Rangers have done it twice. Of the 4 teams, the Rangers have done it twice.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have laughed, but I mean, we try to be unbiased, but still, it's embarrassing. Go ahead. Please.
No, I just saying this is an embarrassing season for the New York Rangers. They know it, their fans know it, and we're likely going to see changes in the offseason.
Yeah, not only that, they're the 4th team in NHL history, but they joined the teams that have done it previously in the likes of the 2014-15 Boston Bruins, the 2006-07 Buffalo Sabres, and the 92-93 Rangers. And I've been hearing it from Ranger fans on Twitter in which that, well, history tends to repeat itself. Stop living in fantasy, please. This team right now, I mean, if we're being honest, Marc Messier during the intermission basically dissected the New York Rangers apart, in which that he laid out what the Rangers needed to do this offseason in the midst in which that I thought the Rangers absolutely quit. They quit. They absolutely quit in that first period. And especially once Carolina got their game going, where they were cycling pucks down low, from low to high, getting pucks in deep and everything like that, they really just took over, especially like Seth Jarvis who and Sebastian Aho. I mean, stop me if you heard this before. This is a team that is very difficult to beat at home. But the Rangers, this game was a microcosm of their season. When things go wrong, they melt into a puddle pretty quickly, and you saw that again today in this game. Yes, the game got a little bit tighter thanks to Keandre Miller and as well as Adam Fox making it 5-3 later in the third period, but still, this game was already done, and they already knew that this game and their season was already done by the time you got to that point. So, for Ranger fans that are saying that, well, next season, this may be the year that they may, win the Stanley Cup, but stop. Just stop right now. The season in this game was an embarrassment, and frankly, the next stop for the New York Rangers, it ain't going to be Cancun. It's going to be Coney Island, eating spoiled hot dogs.
So the Rangers are out. The Blue Jackets, another team needing to win to stay alive and hoping for a Canadiens loss. That would happen. The Blue Jackets with a 7-0 drubbing of the Washington Capitals to stay alive. Let's check in with our local expert, the host of Locked On Blue Jackets.
Well, that one got exciting. Jay Foster, Locked On Blue Jackets here. The Blue Jackets win 7-0 over the Washington Capitals in, honestly, the most exciting game I've seen in a long time. They had goals waved off. They had illegal players on the ice. They had, again, 7 goals. They had 60, 70 penalty minutes handed out. 2 goals for Adam Fantilli, a Gordie Howe for James Van Riemsdyk. Zach Greinke sets the franchise record for most goals by a defenseman in a single season, and the Blue Jackets keep their playoff hopes alive for at least a few more hours. We wait and see what the result of Montreal-Toronto is tonight, but if that was the last meaningful game of the season, hey, sure was a fun one. So we'll be talking about it on Locked On Blue Jackets in just a little bit, actually.
All right, and thanks to our guy, Jay Forrester, the host of Locked On Blue Jackets. He forgot to mention Jet Greaves had his first career shutout, 22 saves. They may have run out of cannonballs there firing the cannon in Columbus with those 7 goals, but obviously got to win to stay alive. You can't control what else happens, but you can control what you're doing. So a nice win for Columbus.
I thought the college football national championship game was over. I mean, scoring a touchdown and the extra point. But no, apparently the Columbus Blue Jackets took the ball and ran it into the end zone against the Washington Capitals. Listen, it was an impressive offensive output today. Fantilli had the 2 goals, and as well as James Van Riemsdyk, he had a goal and 2 assists in this game. But the thing that stood out to me was the fact that it just looked like from Jump Street, the Columbus Blue Jackets, they were just ready to go. And they had that extra juice, whereas my concern for the Capitals going into this game was they just looked like they just didn't have anything to go, anything to show forth. And in fact, at one point, I said to myself, man, at one point, do you say you're a little concerned, but you're not hitting the alarm button, if you understand what I'm saying? But at the same time, like this prolonged stretch, and I get that the Capitals have been focused on Ovi's on all-time goal record chase and everything like that, but their quality of play has been lacking. And in this game, especially against a desperate Columbus team that showed up today, I was a little concerned. But Columbus, that was one heck of a performance offensively. Jet Graves, congratulations for your first NHL shutout. But the Capitals, I'm starting to get a little concerned. But that's just me. Some may say you're overreacting, but that's just me.
Well, they have wrapped up the East, and Alexander Ovechkin did not play in this one, but I don't think anybody saw a 7-0 loss coming for the Capitals.
Yeah.
We talked about one New York team out. Another New York team joined them. That would be the New York Islanders, who lost in a shootout to the Philadelphia Flyers 4-3. Let's check in with our local expert, the host of Locked On Islanders.
The New York Islanders have officially been eliminated from the playoffs after they fall in a shootout 4-3 to the Philadelphia Flyers. The good news from an Islanders perspective, they played a lot better than they did the last 2 games. After a shaky defensive first period, they kind of recovered. Marcus Hogberg played better in goal, and the Islanders did manage to tie the game with just a little bit more than a minute left in regulation on a goal by Bo Horvat. But could not get anything going in overtime or in the shootout, and a season that is marked by frustration now officially comes to an end, as this Islander team needs to make major changes this offseason as this roster just gets older and struggles more and more. Another game tomorrow. Let's see how this team responds. Hopefully Pierre Engvall is okay after he was apparently injured. We'll cover all that and more on the Locked On Islanders podcast.
Thanks to our guy Gil Martin, the host of Locked On Islanders, for that. So again, major changes, as he said. It's going to be major changes for the Islanders and for the Rangers. One note for the Flyers: Calder Trophy candidate Matvei Michkov did pick up an assist, gives him 60 points in his rookie season. And real quick, Shu, we got the Panthers beating the Sabres 3-2 in a shootout. Anton Lundell, the only shootout goal in this one, and the Panthers get the 3-2 victory. Florida resting up for the playoffs. No Alexander Barkov, no Sam Reinhart in this one. And right now they are tied with Tampa Bay for second in the Atlantic. They both have 98 points, and they're going to be playing each other coming up on Tuesday. So that could be a playoff preview, or likely playoff preview, coming up soon.
It's going to be a good one. And like for the Panthers, it's definitely good, to get those additional 2 points. But I'm telling you, like, now with the playoff picture becoming a lot more clearer, and the Panthers, getting themselves back on the right track, it's good to see that they were able to pick up the 2 points against the Buffalo Sabres.
And they're resting their guys, getting them ready for when it matters most, with the playoffs obviously looming. All right, coming up next, the Jets and Golden Knights are looking for division titles. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On NHL Game Night. And there's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute NHL showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup. But finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until I found Gametime. Gametime makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you can see the total cost up front. No surprises at checkout. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events. And with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. Their lowest price guarantee means I never worry about overpaying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. That is code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we still have 4 games to wrap up, and we start with the Winnipeg Jets knocking off the Chicago Blackhawks 5-4 in a shootout. Winnipeg would clinch the Central with 1 point. They got 2, and they are now the division champions. Also 5 points now up on Washington for the President's Trophy. But again, the Jets clinching the top seed in the West for the first time in franchise history.
You talk about quite a game and quite a resilient effort for the Winnipeg Jets, in which that, like, the start wasn't too good. The way that they went about their process, not all of the impressive, but you got to give credit where credit is due. And I thought that one of the things that was really great to see was the resilience, and especially with the way that, even though that Chicago kept battling back in this game, but to see the Jets and for them to really to come up huge in that third period, Josh Morrissey most notably with the 2 third period goals, I thought it was critical that they get this win on the road. And on top of that, on a night that Connor Hellebuck was not particularly sharp, but the way that their defenseman, the Jets defenseman came up huge in this game, you can't overstate it. And also, just real quick, I also want to give a very special shout out to both Patrick Maroon and as well as Alec Martinez, who played their final NHL games tonight, and they were saluted and celebrated at the United Center, and what was a very special moment for 2 NHL veterans, both of which won the Stanley Cup 3 times as they rolled off into the sunset, but gaining their NHL careers.
Yes, final NHL home games. They are still going to play the road games, we think, but those are the last game at home for Chicago. So they Maroon had already announced his retirement, and Alec Martinez before this game did announce his retirement as well. Washington, I mentioned, 5 points up, or excuse me, Winnipeg, 5 points up on Washington for the President's Trophy. Last team to win the Stanley Cup and also win the President's Trophy, the Chicago Blackhawks in the 2012-2013 season.
Also, in a full season, I just want to add to that too, Detroit Red Wings 07-08. Hasn't happened in a full season in over 15 years.
Another team looking for a division title, the Vegas Golden Knights, and they would take care of business, beating the Nashville Predators 5-3. So the Golden Knights win the Pacific Division. This game was tied 3-3 late. Defenseman Noah Hannafin gets the game winner with under 2 minutes to go. And then Ivan Barbashev iced it into an empty net. The Vegas Golden Knights have 107 points on the season. The only two teams that have more, the top team in the East, the Washington Capitals, and the top team in the West, the Winnipeg Jets. I kind of feel like we're sleeping on the Golden Knights a little bit here.
I think a lot of people are. And I think that when you look at the Golden Knights, like, I think it would be foolish to not consider them to be one of the legitimate Stanley Cup championship favorites. In fact, for me personally, there are 8 teams that I look at and say they have a legitimate chance to win the Stanley Cup. 4 of them in the West, 4 in the East. One of the teams in the West is the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, what exactly is there not to like? And I think that, like, not just about tonight's game, but the bigger picture, I think they're kind of being disrespected a little bit because of the fact that most people are looking at Colorado, and they're looking at Dallas, and they're forgetting about Vegas. You can't forget about Vegas. They just won the Cup 2 years ago. So beware of the Vegas Golden Knights. This team could surprise, well, not really surprise many people, but they could really make some serious noise in the Western Conference playoff again this year.
You mentioned the Dallas Stars. They lose at home to the Utah Hockey Club 5-3. We did a show on Thursday, and the host of Locked On Stars, Joey Erickson, was very doom and gloom. And we were kind of like, gee, what's he talking about? Well, we need to be quiet and listen to the local experts because he watches his team every night. And Dallas has now lost 5 in a row, and 3 of them at home. And it started with that ugly collapse against Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Joey Erickson was right. Maybe there is something seriously wrong with the Dallas Stars right now.
You talk about happening at the worst time. This is why I'm a big believer of how you finish the season going into the playoff absolutely matters. And the Dallas Stars they're not doing themselves any favors in which that the way that they've lost these games. And as well as, listen, like Utah, they played one heck of a game, and Logan Cooley had a 3-point night. But Dallas, you wonder if this has got to be more than mental. It has bad habits creeped into their game. I think so. And I just wonder about what exactly is the deal in Dallas, and what Peter DeBoer is going to do to help right the ship in Big D before the playoffs began, or is it too late?
I mean, it seems like they're waiting for Miro Heiskanen to ride in on a white horse and save the day, but there may be bigger problems than just that. We'll see.
Yeah.
We saved the best for last. My LA Kings with a 5-4 win over the Colorado Avalanche. Let's check in with our local expert of Locked On LA Kings. Oh, wait, that's me.
Yes, it is.
The Kings will be facing the Edmonton Oilers for a 4th straight season. Vegas's win made that official. So 4 years in a row, Kings Oilers. I certainly hope for a different outcome this time around, but a big win for the Kings. Shu, we've talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
The thing that might be the difference this time around is home ice advantage. The Kings now 4 points up on Edmonton for that home ice advantage in their first round playoff matchup. They will play head to head against each other on Monday in Edmonton. The Kings win that game, they will get home ice. Now, they can also lose that game and still get it, but big game coming up for the Kings. Home ice may be the difference this time. I'm hoping. Kevin Fiala had 2 goals, new career high for him, 34 on the season. Darcy Kemper almost scored a goalie goal in this one.
Yeah.
But I was hoping maybe I'd see something I'd never seen before at an NHL game with my own eyes. Unfortunately, that did not happen. No Nathan McKinnon, no Cale Makar for Colorado. We should point out that they are resting up for the playoffs. Brock Nelson did get his 300th career goal. He had 2 goals in this game, so congrats to him. And real quick, Shu, something we were going to touch on last night, we didn't get a chance to, but you talk about the Colorado Avalanche. Gabriel Landeskog, he's playing in the AHL, trying to make a comeback.
It's incredible. And by the way, tonight he had his first goal in nearly 3 years. I mean, the last couple of nights have been absolutely marvelous in regards to like the story of Gabriel Landeskog, and now seeing him playing in live game action. And I'm excited every night. Now I'm watching and paying attention to the tweets that come out from the Colorado Avalanche, and like to see Gabriel Landeskog make these steps in the right direction is wonderful to see for him, and as well as his teammates, and for the Colorado Avalanche, and for all of hockey as well.
Yeah, it could be a huge, not just momentum booster, but just a huge shot in the arm for Colorado going into just to have their captain back on the ice after 3 years, how much he's sacrificed. Even if he doesn't put up any numbers, if he could just be in the lineup, that would be such a huge boost for them. Mentioned it will be Oilers and Kings for a 4th straight year. Also, we talked about the Jets winning. That means it will be Avalanche, Dallas Stars in the first round of the playoffs. That one is also confirmed as well. So, Shu, the playoff picture getting clearer and clearer as we head down the stretch here.
It's getting clearer and clearer. And not only just that, that means now we can start previewing playoff series. And that, my friend, is something I am so ready for at this point, especially now we're in the final weekend of the regular season.
All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On NHL Game Night. You got a taste of some of our local experts and their shows. Make sure you check out all of the Locked On shows for your favorite teams. They will keep you updated every day on your team. I'm Eddie Garcia. He is Shukri Wrights. Thanks for listening and watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.